Welcome to the Inspireurope workshop on mentoring and supporting researchers at risk. My name is Marit Egner. I'm from the University of Oslo, one of the partners in the Inspireurope project. I will lead you through this workshop where we have 4 speakers and also an interactive part. This is the first time we are doing this kind of workshop as a Zoom meeting and not as a webinar, so bear with us if we have some technical challenges. I hope not. So I will just give you a few technicalities and practical information first on how this works. So this is a Zoom meeting in the format where we have 100 participants. More than 100, it might be more than 100 participants, which means that it's important that everyone will mute themselves except from when you're in the breakout rooms. If there are anyone who needs to be anonymous, I would make sure you know that the first part of the workshop will be recorded with the introductions. And you can rename yourself not to have your full name on your label. The target group of this workshop is staff of hosts and employers, but we are also lucky that we do have a number of researchers at risk participating in the workshop, and I'm sure you will also have valuable input in the group work. If you want to ask questions, you can ask the questions in the chat, but avoid using the chat for to share with everyone if you have like private comments. When we have the presentations, it's good to use the speaker view so that you see mainly the person who is speaking. You can find that most likely up in your right-hand corner of your screen. There you can choose between gallery view and speaker view. We will have a group work at the end of the workshop, and that will be explained later on. The program for today, sorry. The program for today is connected to mentoring and support of researchers at risk. This means that it's both about refugees and people who came directly to Europe through different programs such as Scholars at Risk, the PAUSE program, the Philip Schwartz Initiative, etc. And when it comes to mentoring, it's very much about career development and academic activities, etc., to do within a hosting situation or internship or in a position, and how to work on continuing your career. I think this workshop will build on what we heard in the plenary sessions earlier today about some of the challenges people meet when they're in a researcher at risk situation. After we will have 4 short presentations, then we will have some questions and answers. Then we will go into breakout rooms and have small groups discussing, and then we will have a wrap-up session and some next steps at the end. Our speakers today have different backgrounds, but all relating to the topic. The first speaker will be Ekrem Duzen from the Bielefeld University. He will speak from the perspective of a researcher at risk. Then we will have Achim Rohde, who's replacing, who's replacing Professor Kanuk, and he's representing the Academy in Exile program in Germany. Then we have Professor Mathieu Schneider, who's Vice President of Cultural and Social Integration at the University of Strasbourg, and also coordinator of the network of French universities committed to refugees, the Réseau MENS. And we have Eva Glaumann from the Swedish initiative Jobbsprånget, which is Swedish initiative to assist researchers and academics into the labor market, also inside and outside academia. And I will now let our first speaker have the floor, and this will be Dr. Ekrem Duzen. Please, Ekrem, and I will stop sharing my screen.
Hello, everyone. As Marit already introduced, I'm Ekrem. I'm from Bielefeld University. And thank you for our hosts and organizations and Inspireurope to presenting this opportunity to share our perspectives and example from the, let's say, side of the scholars at risk or researchers at risk. I think I have 5 minutes time, so I'll try to be as concise as possible. I would like to share a really schematic, reduced picture of what mentoring means and could mean to researchers at risk who are to be repositioned in, let's say, European research area, not only specific countries, but at the European extent. So skipping some probably important introductory words, I'll just want to directly into the subject matter and want to present my two distinctions or two parts, two basic parts of what could productive mentoring should or could have, and then I'll divide each part into two again. What I'm trying to, what I will try to state is that mentoring as scholars at risk first has to take into account on one side the content and the process of mentoring the scholars at risk, and on the other side or wing, mentoring at a micro level and mentoring at a macro level. So what I'm trying to express with content and process is as simple as the words themselves suggest. Content is the very subject area of the scholar that you are going to mentor. So we don't have to spend much time on what's content and what's about. It's my subject area. That's what I have been busy working on and what I intend to work in the near future. Of course, there can be some change in the way. But the process precedes content in the context of researchers at risk, not because of importance, but because of urgency. So it is not saying that process is more important than content. No, they are maybe equally important, but the process becomes more urgent when I am to be repositioned in another country, in another region, in another institution, a university, faculty, department, whatever, a research institution. Why? Because I had to leave my, let's say, daily habits of doing my work, the very frame I accustomed to, and I have to learn a new frame because things are being done differently than in my country, city, university. Of course, there are differences from university to university or institution to institution everywhere, or from one department to another department in every university. But as the frame getting larger and larger, like a country, a region, a continent, so the processes that I have to adjust becomes larger. So that's why process part is more urgent, if not important, than the content, because I bring the content along with me, but not the used to process. I cannot carry that part with me. So let's shift to the other wing. which is the mentoring at micro level and macro level, because there's going to be a meso level, which I'm going to suggest. And by micro level and macro level, what I mean by micro level is to lead, to orient, to support the researcher at risk with some necessary basic skills and maybe needs, like composing a CV, like writing a research proposal, or some language training, or some cultural crash course, because you are now living in another country. It may be slightly different from your home countries, whatever that means, culture, or it may be somewhat grossly different than that. So at one side, mentoring tries to support the researchers at risk by this micro level, let's say, assets, like CV writing, language, composing a project proposal, other writing skills, publishing an article, the procedures, etc. And at the macro level, the researchers at risk are being presented. We are being presented with the research opportunities. I'm in Germany, let's say in Germany, there are research grants and fundings by some state agencies like DFK in Germany, the state's scientific support agency institution, or the ministries like Education or Family Ministry, or even Ministry of Interior Affairs. So we are getting informed about who are the main or major grantees, supporters of research. What I would like to express is that the researchers at risk in European context, specifically in Germany, are mostly lost in between micro and macro levels. We are led to write CVs, how to write a proposal thing, and we are being informed about who is who and what's what and where is where. It's okay. But what we lack most is how to compose a research proposal fitting to, let's say, the DFG scheme or BMBF's scheme, or some foundations like Volkswagen Stiftung in Germany, like Duzen, or like Leibniz program or Max Planck's program. There are like nearly 5,000 funding agencies in Germany, big or small. So this is what I would like to call meso-level mentoring. And what we need most is that tailoring our work in a way to fit, to make our research ideas, proposal, writings, fitting to the schemes of the agencies that are actually providing the grants. So the most programs, it is my experience, a lot of my colleagues' experience, it's just experience of people. I don't have on this specific leveling, don't have a scientific data. I cannot support my words with some scientific data. These are all, let's say, personal observations. But since I think I have just left some seconds, let me put it in even more simpler words. We don't need to learn how to write CVs. We don't need to learn how to compose a research proposal. We already know that. We don't need to overwhelmed with language courses. It's important. It doesn't mean that it is not important. It is not primarily an urgent issue. Most of the time, most research grantees accepting proposals in English. And if necessary, we are able to get support in translation. So learning the language is important more in terms of socially than academically. So it can be, it is not as urgent as my learning how to fit my research idea into a BMBF or the FK proposal. And at the macro level, it's good to know that there is the FK over there and they have like millions of euros. It's good to know that there is BMBF over there and they have millions of euros. But if I don't know how to fit my research idea in their own mindset approach, their targets, their purpose of doing research, my ideas are of no use. And I could be looked from afar that I am not able to produce any good research ideas, or I don't have the necessary skills to write them down. No, that's not the case, because what we miss is the meso link.
Okay,
so
I think we need to end there.
Yeah, what we should do is not to keep busy the researchers at risk with all the international offices detailed work, but concentrate on the meso level events. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ekrem Duzen. I think you got a very clear message, and it will be interesting to hear the other speakers after this. I think the next person to speak will be Professor Mathieu Schneider from the University of Strasbourg, who has experience with mentoring several, researchers at risk, and also with the more network level where you can maybe see the MESA mentoring level. Please, Professor Mathieu Schneider.
So thank you, Marit. Thank you, everybody, for the invitation. I will try to be very concise and to give, I think, a different point of view at that of Ekrem. But I was very interested in what he said, because it's the experience of researchers at risk, and I have the other experience, that of a vice president of a university, trying to support scholars at risk and maybe not succeeding. So I'm really happy to hear what you really need. Maybe the situation in France is a bit different than in Germany, but anyway, I think lots of things we have in common. So for me, there are different kinds of support for researchers at risk. The first support we see as university is first to integrate our researchers at risk in the social and university life. And you were speaking, Ekrem, about a language, about CV, and so of course we know that it is important, but this is for us not, of course we try to do that and to give language courses in French, of course, for social integration, in English also if needed. But what is important for us in integration in the university. And one criteria when we welcome a researcher at risk at our university in Strasbourg is that there is a will from the research unit to welcome the researcher at risk. This will can come from a link that they met before in a congress, or they worked together before, or there is a wish that the specific work of the researchers is important and relevant for the research unit. And if there is a desire on both sides, from the researcher side and from the unit side, to meet, then I think it can match. And so this is for me the first kind of support we have to give and to make sure. Of course, after that, we have to help within the research units, the researcher at risk, to be integrated in bigger research projects. We're speaking about how to fit your research into a big research project. But I think this is one task of the researcher, but also one task of the head of the research unit, to say, the researcher at risk is part of my unit, and he will be involved in this or this project, and I will help him fitting his own or her own research to the research policy of France, Europe, or everywhere. So this is very important, also to help them to publish, to associate them to publications, to be co-authors of publications, and to, what is very important to us is to build networks. You can't leave the researcher at risk alone in his office. He has to work with colleagues from the field, but maybe also other colleagues from the universities. And one way for us to make them integrated in that way is also to offer them the possibility to teach and not only to make research. We are universities, we have research and teaching. If you teach, you meet students, you meet other colleagues, maybe not only the ones working on your specific topic, but working in a broader field, and you can be integrated in a faculty, and we hope also in the university, but also to help building networks within a discipline, international networks, via congresses, via societies of specific disciplines. And if you make all that together, I think you can try to have a good integration, which means also that for that, you need a body. You mean somebody in your unit, which is who is taking care of you, who is helping you with your helping point, at least at the beginning, because you arrive in a new world, and it's important when you're in a new world to have a point where you can look at and ask questions. So I would, if I have 1 minute, end with advices, in my opinion, and to universities, what they should do if they want to have a good integration of scholars at risk. First, they have to make sure that there is a university policy for researchers at risk, that it is not only a single research unit that wants that, but that there is a whole policy. You have to make sure the research unit is willing to host a scholar at risk. You have to make sure there is a body. You have to offer teaching seminars for scholars at risk, for CVs, for language and so on. You have to offer teaching opportunities. You have to build networks between the scholars at risk themselves, and networks also between universities welcoming researchers at risk, because you are stronger when you are together. And at last, I would say you have to advocate for that, because we all here together, we are convinced that it's important, but not everybody, not every university is convinced of that. And I mean, it's a general awareness which is expected if you want a complete and successful integration of researchers at risk. And this will be my last word. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Professor Mathieu Schneider. This was very clear and specific, so that would be interesting for the discussion afterwards. Our next speaker will be Dr. Achim Rohde from the Academy in Exile, Freie Universität Berlin. And you also have experience with a number of researchers at risk and also a number of university units, I think. The floor is yours, please.
Yes, Marit, thank you for introducing me. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm happy to join you for today. I'm actually presenting a project that is active in this endeavor to support scholars at risk at a place called Academy in Exile, which was founded in 2017 against the backdrop of the events in Turkey and the purges and so on, at the initiative of Kader Konuk from Duisburg Essen University, who couldn't join us today. That's where I'm here. I joined Academy in Exile last year. I'm a Middle East historian, so I was working in area studies context related to the Near and Middle East, and this is what brought me to this project, which actually morphed, and I'm going to share my screen in a second to give you a little bit of illustration regarding our project, which since its founding in 2017 morphed into an institutional platform. This is my screen. I hope you can see it. That is supported by 4 host institutions: University of Duisburg Essen, Freie Universität Berlin, and then the Kulturwissenschaftliches Institut in Essen and the Forum of Transregional Studies in Berlin. So today we're kind of a trans-German institutional platform to support scholars at risk. Means we preserve and support scholars who are threatened, or bodies of knowledge that are being marginalized or delegitimized in an increasing number of countries across the globe. So we started in 2017 mainly with a focus on the Turkish situation, and we're now expanding kind of due to the growing demand, if you will, if you allow me to say so, all over the world. Maybe the specificity of Academy in Exile as compared to other programs that support scholars at risk is that we target scholars who are specifically threatened for their academic or civic engagement relating to issues like human rights, democracy, social justice, or peace, etc. That means we mainly focus on scholars from the humanities, social sciences, including economics and law. And our criteria for selecting our fellows are slightly different from, let's say, Scholars at Risk or International Rescue Fund, in that we evaluate not only according to the personal risk situation of each applicant, but also to relating to academic merit and to suitability to our programs, because Academy in Exile works along a cohort model that tries to assemble groups of scholars at risk in the 4 host institutions that carry our academy, where they engage in, well, you know, common interdisciplinary work and are put into touch with scholars from the various host institutions. And we try to integrate them in this way, or include them gradually into the institutions where they are hosted. This cohort model tries to emulate, oh, I did de-share my screen, it seems. I'll share it again. Sorry,
it just went off.
Okay, so I'll share it again. This cohort model tries to emulate places like the New School for Social Research in New York, or Istanbul University in the 1930s, you know, which institutions which hosted a number of German exiles during the Nazi period. So this is kind of the historical model that we built ourselves on. And to just give you one more slide, if it goes, if it works. Here we are. We actually, until now, and since our founding in 2017, have supported a number of scholars, majority of them from Turkey, but also from other countries, for the duration of 1 to 2 years. These are fellowships that are being sponsored by a variety of donor institutions like the Mellon Foundation or the Volkswagen Foundation and others, who enable us to host those scholars in Berlin or in Essen for, you know, amount of time as visiting scholars, and during this time they can continue their academic work in Germany. You can see more statistics regarding, you know, the breakup of our fellows on the Academy in Exile workshop. I won't elaborate on this further, and move on to the next and last slide, which didn't work now. I'm sorry. The technology is somehow not my friend today. So what do we actually do in Academy in Exile? And this relates to what also Ekrem Duzen systematically outlined in the beginning in his input. We try to do mentoring on a variety of levels. First of all, we try to facilitate an environment that enables fellows to actually engage in academic work and scholarly work. communication panels, activities, and sorts. We also try to enlist them in other programs. That means that, basically they are visiting fellows, they don't have a position. So what we try to do is we actually do help them compose proposals for third-party funding that are specifically designed for various programs in order to ensure their continued stay in Germany also after the end of their fellowships. We do help them in visa issues and legal issues if they are relevant, and as far as we can do. We also, of course, we as a third-party funded project, we are dependent on output, and we actually do support publishing and dissemination of intellectual output by our fellows, which also is, a precondition for giving them any chance to integrate in this highly competitive academic market that is Germany at the moment.
You need to be a bit quick at the end now.
So running out. Challenges on the way, for instance, expanding our regional reach to scholars from other countries. What do we do with travel bans or travel limitations, either for political reasons or for, on a corona situation? It's not easy to have our new fellows, which if we plan to have to get to Berlin or to Essen in the second half of the year, how they will actually get there in the current situation. But this is something that we're working on, and maybe for the rest we can discuss it later on in the group sessions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Achim, Rohde. This was very interesting, and to see how your model is working. And we will probably hear more about the different ways during the discussions. We will now move on to the last speaker, who is Eva Glaumann from the Jobbsprånget, a Swedish initiative to get academics into different work situations, mainly in the private sector, but also universities and or other organizations. Please, Eva.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Lovely to be invited here today. My name is Eva, and I work for the Royal Academy of Engineering Sciences, and shortly that's also called EVA. So I'm not talking about myself when I'm actually talking about the Academy. So at EVA, we are running an internship program called Jobbsprånget. In English, it's Job Leap, to take the leap to the job. And it's so inspiring to listen to you others, previous speakers, because the difference from our program to the ones we've heard is that you can see us as an administrative body that is between the candidates, the employment agency in Sweden, and, in example, the universities here. So we enter in a phase where we support all three parties so that it should be as easy as possible to offer internship. So in short, it's a 4-month program. We started in 2016, and that was due to the refugee crisis. In Sweden, we had 160,000 people seeking asylum, and a quarter of these were academics. So what we would like to do is to reach out to newcomer academics and to offer them 4 months of internship. And we have 4 different target groups. So it's engineers, architects, scientists in the natural science area, and also business finance area. We have lately tried also within the pharmaceutical and pharmacist area, and it's also working very well. So what we would like to do is to accelerate the integration and reduce the waste of this fantastic competence, like you all know, that they have, and just try to give them an opportunity to enter the labor market. And we've had so far 770 candidates participating in the program. We have had 200 employers all over Sweden participating, and these are both from the private sector, but also from the public sector. And within the public sector, that's also where we have the universities participating in Sweden. So KTH, the Royal Institute of Technology, are participating, Chalmers University in Gothenburg, and also Jönköping, Karlstad University, amongst others. So what actually does this mean? So the researchers at the universities, they open up for positions, and then we present candidates to them, and they are the ones selecting their own candidates and letting us know this, so that we can support in the administrative process with the National Employment Agency in Sweden. I have promised to tell you a bit more about the mentor and supervisor program that we have, but just to give you short the results, 7 out of 10 are offered jobs after the internship, 50% are women participating, and 50% of all employers who participated have employed the candidates afterwards, without this being a criteria that they have to employ, but they are allowed if they prefer or like the candidate. So how is it done? We reach out to the employers. We ask them, would you like to participate? And from there, we ask potential supervisors if they're interested in opening the door for these candidates. They have to define the position and select the candidate. Thereafter, we offer them, it's not mandatory, a 3-hour meeting, a supervisor meeting. And there we go through the steps for these 4 months. And they're predominantly about the candidates being able to reactivate their competence, because it might have been a couple of years since they actually visited or entered the labor market again. So they have been working in previous systems, and now they can work into the more updated systems. To give you an example, language training. And I love that this has been mentioned beforehand, because our language in Jobbsprånget, JobLeap, is actually English. So working in Sweden, you might think Swedish is very important, and it is to enter the society from a social perspective, but not from an employment perspective, because English is, for many companies and organizations in Sweden, the main language, as you're familiar with here as well today, I've heard. And the last part that we focus on is something called employability and networking. In Sweden, 7 out of 8 jobs are actually gotten through networking. And how are you able to get a job like that if you don't have a network? So we try to encourage the candidates, but also the supervisors, to increase the networking skills. And we have talked about, for example, CV coaching. I think it's very important that you have a CV that is that's attractive to Swedish employers. I believe you have CVs that might look attractive to German, Norwegian employers, etc. But just to give them that advice. And then you have LinkedIn. Like, do you have a profile in LinkedIn, and how does it work? Because in 2016, when many candidates came to Sweden, they did not know about LinkedIn. So you start in those areas where recruitment is crucial in Sweden. And that's also where you give those type of tips and advice. And we also have interview training. So you get a test session where you can practice going to an interview so that you feel more prepared when you enter the real interview, no matter if it's at another employer or internally within the university. To give an example. Those meetings are completely mandatory. The win of it is that the other supervisors meet previous supervisors who participated, and they can also give their best advice to them. So what we usually say to them is that don't complicate it too much. They are highly educated. They need a network to take the next step. And Jobbsprånget is financed by the Wallenberg Foundation and the Swedish government. So it doesn't cost anything to participate. And we are here to offer that extra little support that's needed as a final push for them to take that small step that's needed. I think that summarizes it short, Marit.
Thank you very much, Eva. This is very useful, and it's interesting to see how the different approaches are quite similar, and also the different sectors are quite similar, because both in academia and in the private industry, you can see that you can get far with English, but in the social settings, you might need some more, of course. I will just, we're running a little bit over time. I will just have a few quick questions to you, and then we'll move on to the next, which is the working groups. So I was wondering first to Ekrem, Duzen, would you maybe say, after listening to these other speakers, what would you think on the micro level maybe would be the most important to focus on for someone mentoring a researcher at risk?
Yeah, let me clarify myself. I'm not saying that micro level is not important. There are groups of researchers at risk. Some researchers are more proficient in doing so. Some researchers, some scholars, some persons, let's say, they may be more able in, not more able, more quick. I correct my word, it's not ability. They may be more quick in advancing in a language course. They may be quick in composing their CVs according to the standards of their country. And some may be slow. What I'm trying to say is these are important, but I am not sure if they are as urgent as they are important.
I was actually not asking so much about the different kinds of, but you said it would be important to focus on the academic content, yes. And then what would then be the important things?
Then it is simply, let me proceed with an example. In my institute here in Bielefeld and in other departments and faculties that I observed, I witnessed, the colleagues, the scholars at risk, who are invited to attend almost all of the institutes or faculties, meetings, conferences, any activities, are far more able to compose their ideas into a working research proposals than who were not invited as frequently or as enthusiastically. We were invited. I am on the lucky side of the, let's say, play. We were invited almost all project writing procedures, regardless of I am involved in the team or I am one of the applicants or not. I had the chance to observe the project proposal writing, the project proposal writing procedure as it is going to be presented to some granting agency. That is the kind of work I think the researchers at risk needs most urgently, knowing the work hands-on, online. So what Professor Schneider stressed is important to involve researchers into a different variety of events and actual events, even if they are not going to be the main applicant, main writer, or main author. That would be the most effective method of adjustment, of course, in addition to other facilities.
Thank you very much. So very much into actually integration into the real academic community at the local level and in the larger network. I have one question to Achim Rohde. You're talking about this cohort model. I think both the scholars at risk and other networks and programs are, of course, matching the interests of the host unit and the scholar. But what would you say is the extra added by having this cohort system compared to having this more integrated directly into one research group where you are placed?
Well, of course, it would be nice to have our fellows integrated into existing research groups with you know, regular scientific academic staff. But first of all, we do try to get our fellows into follow-up projects, actually within the framework of existing research units. The DFG, for instance, is offering such an opportunity, and we do encourage our scholars to do to apply for and we help them to apply in such schemes. But the cohort model actually works for us quite well, because we assemble scholars from, you know, similar disciplinary backgrounds or similar regional backgrounds to actually share their work and discuss it together with external guests who we also invite for our activities, you know, from the host institutions or from other universities in Germany and abroad. And in this way, we are able to create a scholarly setting that proves to be quite fruitful in terms of academic exchange and you know, the further development of these ideas. Because, you know, to be honest, most of those people were thrown out of their daily life and of their you know, the work settings pretty suddenly, and to find yourselves again in a new environment and to rebuild your academic life in terms of, you know, becoming actually active in research necessitates a certain frame, and this is what we offer. So for us, this cohort model works quite well, but I admit it's not the only possible way. The mentoring model, one-to-one, or actually integration into other existing research units are other options that we do encourage as follow-up options for our fellows.
Thank you very much. I think we have to move on to our next part of the workshop, even though I wasn't able to ask questions to all the speakers right now, but our speakers will also be part of the smaller groups, so in different, some of the different groups. I will now try to explain how we will run the group work. I'll just share the presentation again. Okay, so the group work. We will automatically divide you into small groups or of 6 or 7 people. And then when you are getting into your group, you need to appoint a spokesperson or rapporteur who will write the findings of the group or discussion points of the group into a Padlet. This is a website, interactive website, where every group can actually put their information and see all the other groups' information as well. This will be done by, you will see the website and you click on the plus sign, and then you can write from your group. You write the number of the group that you see when you enter as the title, and then you can fill in. The questions will be on the Padlet, but I will also show it to you very quickly after this. And you will have approximately 25 to 30 minutes to respond to the questions, and then you will be taken back to the plenary. And you will get a little message 5 minutes before the group work ends. The link to the Padlet should also be shared in the, I think it has been shared in the chat. Yeah, so if you see the chat, you can go into the Padlet. And then the questions that we want you to discuss, maybe you won't have time to get through all of it, but the questions are seen here. What you see as the main challenges to mentoring and support researchers at risk in organizations based on your own experience? What support schemes or initiatives would help you and your organization to provide increased support and mentoring to researchers at risk? And if you were to develop a guide to mentoring, supporting researchers at risk in organizations, what do you consider to be the main components? Hopefully we can use the results from this workshop to develop some kind of guidelines, or at least inspiration for people. So now I will stop here, and then I think we will suddenly be into our different groups. People are coming back little by little. I will just share my screen again. So now I think most people are back in the plenary. I hope you enjoyed sitting in the smaller groups and discussing. I can see that there has been a lot of things written on the Padlet. The Padlet will be available to see also after the end of this workshop, so that you can take some time and actually look at the different notes that has been made. I think if one or two of the groups want to report from your group work, that would be nice, but we don't have time for a lot of this. So if there's anyone, you can raise your hand in the participant list, and I'll see if I can see it. Anyone who want to report? It's a bit hard to see, so if there is one who want to report, you can actually take the floor. Yeah, there we have one. Let me see, that's, Ruba Nasri.
Yes. Hello, everybody. Thank you for this group of work. We discussed many things. So for the first question is the challenge, the main challenge that we face it as scientific or scientists and at risk is to have someone who guide the scientist when he arrived to the country. First of all, there is some points about the language, the communication, also the scientific maybe issue, and also the style of life. So there is, I think, 3 points that are very important to help the scholar at risk. It's about the main challenge, and then in each point there is also other details. So for the first point, which is communication, so each scholar needs someone, a person that he can answer his question about the academic part or research part, and about the life on the country. Also, a scientific reference, it will be very important to guide the scholar to find the environment and to find the specialization that is match to his knowledge.
Thank you. Maybe we should hear one more group?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you very much for these insights. I would like to hear from group 5, Frank Albrecht.
Yes, thank you. So in our group, there were representatives, among others, from the University of Oslo, from the University of the Aegean, and from the Council of At-Risk Academics and the Fernuniversität Hagen in Germany. One interesting perspective from the University of Aegean was the problem of scholars who need to protect themselves, need to protect their identities, cannot be quite as open and direct in public settings, but of course need to put themselves out there, their publications, go into conferences to present their work and to move on. So that is quite a big challenge that people need to address. And another interesting perspective from Cara. Cara are working on a mentoring scheme which will be launched later this year. And the challenge is setting the boundaries between the mentors and the mentees. So of course, the mentor cannot solve all the problems for the mentees, but there are of course other issues. One bigger issue, if I understood correctly, was that it's always a question of matching, finding suitable mentors and for mentees, and yes, finding the correct arrangement here. Thank you.
Okay, I don't think we have time to hear from more groups, but I think it was interesting to at least hear some of it, and you can go back to the Padlet and have a look in it, and hopefully we will also be able to make some results available where we can summarize advices. I then just want to share with you that we will have more webinars and workshops on different aspects relevant to host organizations. And if you have ideas for webinar or workshop topics, we would be happy to hear from you. I would also like to remind you to answer the evaluation that you will get by email for the whole Stakeholder Forum. And then I would say thank you very much to our speakers, and also to all of you who contributed with your discussions and inputs. Thank you very much. Then we will end the workshop.